productivity for the day, instead of being in there for 16 hours because you're checking Instagram every 20 minutes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Hey, you used the word grateful, and I'm going to ask you a question that I absolutely stole from Chris Van Vliet. His podcast is fantastic, and I know you already know this question's coming, but what 3 things are you grateful for?
Health. I mean, primarily, even though we're all sick, but I'm lucky that me and my family have maintained good health for the most part. And then I'm thankful that I have a business that allows me to decide when I want to spend time with my family and when I don't. Freedom's a huge value of mine. And you'd have told me a few years ago when I was knocking doors in the heat of the day to make money that I'd be making a salary from my own company that I built, that I can work anywhere in the world and still accomplish. I think I'd be pretty happy about it.
Yeah.
So I'd say freedom. And then the last thing would be all the other things we take for granted. That's one of the ones I try to look for. I'm trying to come up with one and trying to give you ones that like aren't the obvious ones, like my family, my kids, my wife. Like those are all obviously very important.
Then I'm going to ask you a unique question at the end. I'm going to ask you a different question at the end of this interview. And I think, to my knowledge, I've listened to a lot of your content. I don't think you've been asked this question before.
But yeah, the last thing I would say is like I try to often contemplate the things that I take for granted, and really position myself to be really grateful. Just the ability to walk, the ability to speak clearly, to think, to see, to hear, to taste, to smell. Things that a lot of us take for granted every day that not everybody in the world has.
Yeah.
And try to really kind of meditate on some of those things. I like my buddy Bradley talks about this a lot. He talks about how he's like, if how bad do you want $10 million? Like, how grateful would you be tomorrow if you woke up and there's $10 million in your bank account, more than there is right now?
Right. Very grateful.
It'd be a pretty great day, right? Well, what if I said, okay, I'll do that for you, Martin. I'll give you $10 million, but in exchange, you don't wake up. Do you take the
changes the answer, right? Like it's not as an easy answer, right? You have to think about it more.
If you're dead,
yeah,
it doesn't matter. Like all of a sudden you don't want the $10 million. Like you would rather wake up tomorrow than have $10 million in your bank account and not wake up tomorrow. Right? So why don't we wake up every day with that attitude that I can't believe I woke up. This is better than $10 million. Another day to live life. How awesome is that? We don't wake up like that. We think about all the problems that we have. We're thinking about how anxious we are. We're thinking about this thing, that thing, this stress, this problem, that problem, instead of waking up and realizing that we have the greatest gift, which is another day. So I try as much as I can to put myself in that mindset, because it often sets the tone for the way that you view everything the rest of the day, your relationships, the opportunities that come and go, the problems that you have. Everything's viewed in this light of like being grateful rather than this light of being anxious or spiteful.
That's really deep, and it's 100% right. Earlier or last week, I did a podcast episode that I'll be releasing this weekend, but it's with a guy who he's earned the Purple Heart, which is one of the most distinct military honors. And because he lost his foot in an explosion in the Middle East. But since that time, and this is in 2011, and he was 28 at the time. I think, and you're roughly that age now. I know you're 30, but at 28, I mean, you're in great, just you're so young. Since that time, though, he's